Right now, though, we are jumping on the phones where we are joined by Carl Gallups. He's the author of the book, Be Thou Prepared, Equipping the Church for Persecution in Times of Trouble. Carl, welcome back to the Wake Up Call Morning Show.
Hey, Tommy, Jeff, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be back with you guys.
Oh, thanks.
It's good to have you back with us. Of course, you may remember, Carl, we talked to him about his book, Final Warning, and The Rabbi Who Found Messiah, and now his new book. And boy, what a timely book, especially with all the headlines, this clerk down in Kentucky, the baker, and the florist, and all these other folks who have found themselves, facing persecution. And I think persecution that we've not really seen in this country before for our faith. Would you agree with that, Carl?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we have lived relatively persecution-free in our nation, which is one of the reasons why so many people have flocked to our shores over the several hundred years. And we still do live relatively persecution-free in that there's no official government sanctioning of persecution directly against Christians yet, as in, say, North Korea or China or, the Middle East. There's not that kind of persecution, but of course, a lot of Christians and people in America fear that kind of persecution may come our way, especially through the backdoor legislations. The gay marriage ruling, and then the radical homosexual agenda, the radical abortion agenda, all targeting Christians and Christian groups in various ways. And so the book is about that. It's about the growing persecution and the fear of persecution in America, and what should the church's response be? What should Christians' response be? But it's also about just preparing for times of trouble. I mean, natural disasters occur all of the time. What's the Christian's response to that? What's the church's response? And not only natural disasters, but we have the potential for other disasters. We have, civil disobedience, Ferguson-type scenarios where for days and days and days the town was shut down. I mean, you couldn't get to the grocery store and gas stations. You couldn't go to work and normal life for a while in Ferguson and other places. So, people, of course, our borders are open. We've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Muslims being, immigrated into our nation and placed around in various places in our nation. The FBI says that they're currently tracking ISIS cells in all 50 states of the United States. I mean, what's up with that? How do we prepare for that? So the bottom line, guys, I spent 10 years in Florida law enforcement, and I've been over 30 years in ministry, 29 years as the pastor of one church on the Gulf Coast in Hurricane Alley. So 40-plus years of experience of dealing in life and tragedy and trauma and disaster, law enforcement, ministry, hurricanes, tornadoes, all of the stuff that we've gone through down here, and rebuilding of lives and communities and dealing and just the stuff of life has gone into this book because people ask me questions all the time. They know the almost half century of experience that I have in all of this. And so I finally put it all in a book, and I answer some of the tough questions that Christians and churches ask, right down to church security and should Christians carry guns, and what about turn the other cheek, and what about Romans 13, obeying the government, et cetera, et cetera.
There's a lot of talk about all these national things and big overlaying things that cover a wide variety of things, but a lot of people going through just personal trials and tribulations as well, through things that they're going through their lives personally. Can this book help them as well?
Oh, yes. There's a lot to the individual Christian as well as to that Christian's family there. And it comes from a thoroughly, of course, biblical perspective. I go all the way back to the early church, and I examine in a really, I think, interesting way. In fact, I'm getting a lot of reviews from people that are saying it's a very easy read, very interesting, entertaining, if you will. It's not meant to be funny, entertaining, but it's easy to get through. And I deal with how do we deal with life emotionally, spiritually, biblically, of course, from a biblical perspective. But also, there are 3 or 4 or 5 chapters right in the middle that's kind of like a manual, very, very practical information, the 7 basic needs of life and how to prepare for those. Should we store food and water? How do you cleanse water that's been polluted, or when your water goes out? What do you do? How long will food last in a refrigerator, in a freezer, if all the power goes down for days? All of that kind of stuff is in there too. Again, gleaned from my experience of living through weeks on time without power and food and water and gas and even law enforcement in severe tragedies down here. So all of that's in the book as well. So it's kind of an eclectic book. It covers individuals, families, churches, communities, and it does it from a very entertaining, easy-to-read way. And so yeah, I think individuals would glean an awful lot from it as well.
In general, how should people react to things like these doomsday type scenarios, which could happen, but we just don't know? Coming economic collapse, that electromagnetic pulse, World War III, all these doomsday type scenarios. How should we handle those?
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent question, and I deal with that in my book because again, as a pastor, I'm asked those questions all the time, and I speak and preach to those scenarios from a biblically balanced perspective. I am not a date setter, and I'm not a hand-wringer, and I'm not an anxiety-laden kind of preacher that walks around with a sign, the sky is falling. However, I balance that with, look, we've got to admit we're living in very prophetic times. I mean, Israel's back in the land. The nations of Ezekiel 38 are aligning themselves against Israel right now, as was prophesied 2,600 years ago. The rise of Islam and ISIS in the Middle East along the Euphrates River, of all things. Iran and Russia in cahoots with each other. Iran with nuclear weapons, the Iranian-American nuclear arms treaty, America turning its back on Israel. I mean, I could go on and on. The Pope talking about one world governments and the reestablishment of Palestine. These are all hugely prophetic and biblical things that are converging, guys. In our lifetime, we're the only generation to see this convergence. So we're living in biblically prophetic times. There is going to come a World War III one day, according to the Bible. There is going to come a time of great distress across the world, and I know people have various views and perspectives on when the rapture will occur, and I get that, and I don't want to get into an eschatological argument here. I just want to say that, look, regardless of the timing of the rapture, tough times are already here. Hundreds of thousands of Christians in the Middle East are just displaced and being killed and brutally or brutalized, raped and murdered and on the run, and tens of thousands of orphans. So I tell Christians, look, don't walk around in anxiety. Get on with life. We're only here for a short time, but do this. Stay engaged. Be the salt. Be the light. Never grow weary of doing good. We've been raised up for such a time as this. And as you know, and most of your audience knows, I'm quoting Scripture in every one of those admonitions. And that's my message in this book is, look, why do we prepare? Why do I call people to prepare, just reasonably, rationally prepare? Why do I do that? Because once you're prepared, once you have what you need to survive, then when disaster strikes, guess what? You are free to instantly begin to minister the love of Christ to those around you who might not have been prepared or didn't know to be prepared. And being prepared is a biblical mandate for God's people.
Yeah, certainly an encouragement, should be an encouragement to us that we are here for such a time as this. God has ordained us to be in this time. He has a great purpose for us in these times.
Yeah. This book is not written by some shaggy, bearded, grub-eating survivalist with camouflage hiding under a log in the trees. I mean, it's written by a former cop and a pastor, a father, a grandfather, a patriot, and I believe God's people are not called to go hide in the forest in a hole. We're called to engage the culture, to be the salt, to be the light. And so I'm just telling Christians, if you're going to do that, you have to be prepared spiritually, mentally, emotionally, biblically. And then you have to be prepared physically. I mean, you just got to take care of the basic needs of life, and then you're ready. Let me give you guys a quick illustration. I told you I live in Hurricane Alley. We've been through Katrina, direct hits. Katrina, Ivan, Dennis. These things devastated our area. We've spent years rebuilding down here. We're still helping people. Tornadoes, just a few hours north of us, the Tuscaloosa tornadoes and all of that. This stuff has been tough. People in my church lost homes. A lot of lives have been lost. We've had to help churches rebuild along the Gulf Coast and communities. There's been a lot of devastation down here in the last 10, 12 years, and we're still immersed in it. But I just want to tell you this quick story. So when Ivan hit, it went directly over our area, 160-mile-an-hour sustained winds for hours and hours, 190-mile-an-hour gust. We went through that. When we woke up the next morning, our area it didn't even look like the same place. You couldn't recognize it. It looked like a nuclear bomb went off. I can't even describe it to you. Trees down everywhere, power lines down. There was no law enforcement for days. Law enforcement couldn't even move around. Of course, life came to a standstill. No grocery stores, no gas stations, no power, and people just had to survive. And they didn't know how long it was going to last. For some people, it lasted weeks. For other people, they started getting power within 5 or 6 days. But, I mean, we were down for days and some people for weeks. But here's the deal. That morning, when we looked outside and saw what we had survived, I mean barely survived, the first thing I did, I started taking assessment in my mind. Okay, we were prepared. We had generator, we had fuel, we had food, we had water, we had everything we needed. My house was in fairly good shape. We had some damage, but nothing that we couldn't live in. And so immediately, I mean within an hour of taking that assessment, my son, who has a big four-wheel drive pickup, we loaded it up with supplies and chainsaws and strapped a gun on our side because there was no law enforcement, and people get crazy in those kind of times. And we started cutting our way through and going to people's houses and homes and places that looked like they were devastated, and we started ministering and helping other people immediately. Why could we do that? Because we were already prepared. We were fine. We had everything we needed. And so our purpose in life at that point was not to huddle around our fire, so to speak, and just be little loners on an island. Our purpose in life became to engage the culture around us with the love of Christ.
Wow.
We're talking with Carl Gallups. He's the author of the book, Be Thou Prepared, Equipping the Church for Persecution and Times of Trouble. Carl, if folks want to find out more information about the book, how can they do so?
Yeah, well, it's easy. First of all, my website, carlgallups.com, and my name is C-A-R-L, and my last name is G-A-L-L-U-P-S, carlgallups.com, has everything about me. My radio programs, my church, all the videos that I've made, thousands of them, teaching material, all of my books, everything, right there at carlgallups.com. But my books are published by WND Books out of Washington, D.C., major publisher, and so they're available anywhere good books are sold. And plus, of course, you can get them on Amazon. A lot of people get them there. You can get them from a place called Gallups.com, which goes straight to my site on my publisher site, WND Books. So all of those places, you can walk into most any good Christian bookstore, and my books are there, or they can order them if they don't have them in stock.
Excellent. Hey, Carl, thanks so much for spending some time with us and addressing, a timely and important topic.
Tommy, Jeff, thank you so much. And the book covers so much more than what we talked about, so I really appreciate the opportunity to make people familiar with it, and I always enjoy being on your show. God bless you, and thank you guys for what you do.
Oh, you too. Thank you. Thanks.
God bless.
Okay.